Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for Renaissance Periodization. I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to try to answer it. Why does dieting get so much harder when you're leaner? I don't think I have all the answers, but I have a few insights, some of which you certainly have heard, and some of which you may not have heard and not have considered. Because here's the thing, dieting can be hard, and oftentimes is. But we've also made the observation, even personally for ourselves and reading the literature and things like that and talking to other people, that if you're starting out at a much higher body fat, a lot of times dieting to a slightly lower body fat just is not that tough. But if you're starting out pretty lean, it can be real tough and all the way down to brutal. And generally speaking, the leaner you get, the harder dieting gets. And it's not like linear. Like you get a little bit leaner, dieting gets a little bit harder. It's unfortunately a bit more like exponential. You get quite a bit leaner and dieting gets a lot harder, and you get leaner still and it gets a lot harder. Why? Why is there not a linearity there or a constancy? Why is there an exponential relationship? We have at least 5 pretty decent reasons, and I'm sure there are more. First, and this is one of those kind of clever ones that a lot of people don't think of, and they sort of think they're looking at something objectively, but really they fail to consider something that is ever present or common. When you're leaner, you make the observation that it's harder to diet. But when you're leaner, for any given person that you see that's pretty lean, that probably means that you've been dieting for a while already. And thus what you're asking isn't, is it harder to diet when I'm already lean? You're asking that question, but you forgot that we layered a ton of diet fatigue that already took us to get that lean. A lot of times people say when you have a really low body fat level, your energy levels are down, blah, 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 all from low body fat. And that's actually largely untrue. If you're like an endurance runner, and a lot of these folks literally DEXA test at 5 to 6% body fat, that's like damn near a competitive bodybuilder. From a lot of fact local shows, a lot of times the leanest person on stage. Are people who are endurance runners having problem with brain fog and energy and hunger? Fuck no, they're just normal. As a matter of fact, they're ultra performers. They don't feel like you do when you've taken 3 or 4 months to diet to 6% because they live at 6%. And because they live there, it actually, the leanness isn't what's really that problem. It's the cumulative fatigue that you brought to get to that leanness that is really what is making it tough. So that's the first point, is when we think about how hard is it to diet when you're lean, we actually think it's harder than it really is, although it's still harder because we bring in a lot of diet fatigue and think that's part of it. But if you bring in a ton of diet fatigue, you take a maintenance phase, you stay at 6%, 3 months later, you try to diet to 5 or 4%, yeah, it's still going to be super tough, but not as tough as if you try to keep going. I think a lot of times people forget that. Second point, the leaner you become, generally speaking, and of course the longer you diet, etc., the larger and more extreme hormone deviations become from normal. For example, your leptin tends to decrease, and leptin is an unbelievable satiety hormone. So if your leptin is high, then you really don't feel like eating. Like at a very deep level, you're like, food, nah. But if your leptin is low, you are a ravenous animal, and that makes dieting very tough. On the other hand, sort of other paired hormone, ghrelin, tends to get high when you are dieting, and that drives hunger. And if ghrelin is low, then hunger is quite low as well. So you're really fighting hormones a ton more when you're leaner because a lot of them actually detect how much body fat there is, and through other mechanisms, it gets to be real nasty, and then they drive hunger. These hormones and other pathways can also lower your NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, basically how much you move around normally and how sluggish you feel. And the leaner you get, especially through that process of getting lean, but also to some extent being leaner, to a smaller extent, your NEAT can be significantly less, which is a big deal and makes dieting way harder because you burn fewer calories all the time and you have to slash your calories even more to continue to lose body fat, which makes the diet super fucking hard. Number 3, huge one. At some point, the leaner you get, the worse your sleep gets, especially when you start getting what I've termed before exotically lean, bodybuilder lean. Right now, I'm giving you this video. I am in my last day of dieting before the carb up for my next bodybuilding show. The last 2.5 weeks, I don't sleep an entire night. I sleep until about 4 a.m. and then I wake up like this. And my body's like, find food. And I physically can't go to sleep. So I have taken a tiny bit of macros. I'll tell you exactly, 15 grams of protein from these egg white wraps that you get at the store. They're not good. just very satiating and not tasty. I walk over to my fridge. I take out 3 egg white wraps. I have like the tiny like sliver of water. I stuff the egg white wraps. I chew them. I drink the water. And then my body forgets that it is starving to death for just long enough for me to fall back asleep. And then I wake up 3 or 4 hours later and I actually get a full night's sleep. It's that brutal. The leaner you get, the longer you diet, the more fucked up your sleep is. Now, here's the thing. You think, okay, well, I sleep less, whatever. Multiple studies now confirm that if you get less sleep than is ideal, your proclivity to gain and hold body fat massively increases. Your proclivity to lose muscle mass massively increases. And your ability to grow muscle mass straight into the fucking shitter. It all goes bad. Sleep is such a powerful fat loss potentiator that other facets of your diet and training and et cetera, supplements have to crank harder to continue to get you lean. So if someone tells me, hey man, I'm dieting for the show, but my sleep has been shit, that's a very, 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 very big concern. And we need to address that sleep probably through raising food for a while or restructuring nutrient timing so that the sleep is good. So one of the reasons why people find it really, really tough to get ultra lean from already being lean is because sleep goes. And once sleep goes, man, honestly, the way I work with some of the clients I have in the bodybuilding realm is there's a bottom end to how hard we push them. It's not like fucking push, man, 1,000 calories a day, 500 calories a day, it doesn't matter, get lean. The bottom end is this. When your sleep starts to suffer repeatedly night after night after night, we back off. You have to eat more food. You have to do maybe some less activity. Usually just eat more food. Because if you try to get into the shape of your life, leanness-wise, and conserve your muscle while being so starved out that you can't sleep, you're just fighting yourself and you're going to get worse results in every possible way. You will literally get leaner and more jacked if you eat more food and just take a little bit longer. And maybe not even get a little longer. As soon as your sleep goes, you're fucking done. You got to increase your calories at least somewhat to fix that sleep. Now, point number 5 is one that I don't think a lot of people have considered. This is kind of cool. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass and tons of people have considered this. I think we tend to forget that the leaner we get, the next pound of weight we lose becomes a bigger fraction of our total remaining body fat than the previous pound. So for example, if you lose 6 pounds of fat, but you have 60 pounds of total body fat on your body, that's 1/10 of your total body fat. Your body's not going to fight you for 1/10 that hard. I mean, yeah, whatever, 6 pounds, not, take 2 weeks to lose, no big deal. If you want to lose 6 pounds in 2 weeks, but you have 18 pounds of body fat and you're going to go to 12, you are trying to kibosh 1/3 of your body fat in 2 fucking weeks. If we scale that back to the 60-pound body fat person, that's the same thing as trying to lose 1/3, 60, 20 pounds of fat in 2 weeks. Would you ever fucking try to do that? No, you'd be like, that's insane. Of course it's insane. But here you are saying, oh, well, at the beginning of my diet, I lost 6 pounds in 2 weeks, no problem. And at the end, I should be able to lose 6 pounds in 2 weeks. Bullshit. You have to ratio to calories because otherwise, you have to ratio your percent loss to how much you have left, because trying to lose the same absolute amount of fat every week means you're losing greater and greater relative amounts of fat, and your body, through a bunch of hormone systems, keeps track of the relative amount of fat. And you lose a shitload of fraction of your fat, holy crap, it's a bad deal. And you can see this in people that are hyper obese. People weigh 600, 700, 800 pounds of medical obesity. They legitimately lose like 5 to 10 pounds a week for months on end if they get on a low calorie diet. That's nuts. And here's the thing, you think, like, oh my God, they're suffering. They're not even hungry. They're just bored of not eating the junk food that they usually like. If you try that shit, it would never fucking work, right? Even a fraction of that is impossible because you don't have that much body fat. And every chunk you lose is a much bigger fraction of the total. And that will make you pay the price. That's one of the big, big, big reasons why fat loss gets exponentially harder the leaner you get, because you're misconstruing the problem. You're not trying to lose the same fraction of fat, because then the absolute amount would be declining and you could essentially take your caloric deficit and kind of bottom it out. You're trying to take the same chunk every time, and it's harder and harder and harder because you have that little left. So, yeah, okay, I could just stop this lecture now and be like, that sucks, see ya. But we'll give you a few tips to how to do something about this to make the process as painless as possible. It'll still be a bit tough at least. First, big one, is to expect this. If you think, hey, I'm just going to get to striated glutes and it'll be just as easy as me getting from 18% to 16% fat, bullshit. If you expect the suck, then when it happens, you're like, all right, I'm in for it. I'm here for it. I thought this was going to get rough, and here it is, right? Like, they don't recruit soldiers to go to war, and they're like, yeah, it'll be fun. Like, what? Like, it's fucking war. It's going to suck. If you expect it, it'll still suck just as much, but there's no mental discordance of like you wanted this one thing, but it's totally much worse. Next, plan for it. How? Here's a huge, huge, huge point. You want to allot just as much time to get from 10% fat to 5% fat, which is super lean, as it took you to get from 20% fat to 10% fat. It's half of your fat each time, right? And you think, okay, it took me 16 weeks to get from 20% fat to 10% fat, but like that was 10% of my fat that I lost. Shouldn't it take me like 8 weeks to get from 10% to 5% because it's half the amount? Nope. Fractionally, it's the same. So my humble recommendation is to take the same amount of time for that same fraction. So 16 weeks, just as an example, from 20 to 10, and then, of course, maintenance diet to wash out all the fatigue, and then you go from 10 to 5, 16 weeks, not fucking 8. Because people look at it at an absolute value like, oh, I only have to lose like 10 pounds, whatever. 10 pounds when it's between 10% fat and 5% fat is going to be like 20 pounds was when you were in the higher fat percentage. Nothing you do in 8 weeks. Point number 3, sort of building on the last thing I said, you want to use multi-phase diets when you need to. Generally speaking, you don't want to diet unless it's a special circumstance. You have a show coming up in 14 weeks, then fine. You don't want to diet for more than about 12 weeks at a time. After 12 weeks, if your goal is more than 12 reasonable weeks away, you do however many weeks, maybe 12. Then you do a maintenance phase for like as long as that 12 weeks was, at the very least 2/3. So maybe 8 weeks of maintenance, really reduce diet fatigue, and then go into another 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 12 weeks, however long it takes to get to your goal. And if you weigh like 250 pounds right now and you eventually want to weigh 150, that means the combination of fat loss and maintenance can be like 8 different fat loss maintenance. That's 1. Fat loss maintenance, that's 2. 8 of those, because you can't just drop all that weight at once. Because if you do, you're going to accumulate so much diet fatigue, the shit is going to get way too hard, you're going to rebound, and you're going to go back the other way. People do it every fucking day. Right now, like 100 people just did that somewhere around the world. Don't be one of those people. Lastly, stay on top of your NEAT, of your physical activity. I got the step tracker. By the way, it's from MyFit, MIFit. I don't fucking know, some Chinese company. It's sweet. It fucking tracks steps. That's all I can tell you. But like, do you like it? I don't know. It says how many steps I have. It even tells me the time, right? It's super cheap. It was on Amazon. I asked Charlie to get me one, and he got me the fucking cheapest one. It's sweet. That's a hell of an endorsement, right? MyFit CEOs are watching this like, what an asshole. Maybe you guys will buy it. Who knows? Stay on top of your activity. Step tracker is a great way to start. Like my past diet that I'm ending right now. As you can see, my face is all fucked up from not having any fucking body fat left or any desire to live. My phase prior to this, I is an average of 11,000 steps every single day. Average. So some days are higher, some days are lower. If you track your steps and you manage to get minimum amount, same amount you were getting on like a maintenance, just click that in, raise it by 1,000 or 2, and that's it. The entire fat loss phase, it really just eliminates all the NEAT problems because you're actually quantitatively tracking. So it's really good. And stay on top of your sleep, right? If you don't stay on top of your sleep and your sleep goes, you're fucking done, right? You may still make it to the show or make it to the photo shoot or make it to your leanest ever, but it's going to be 10 times more painful than it needs to be. And if you say, okay, I need to keep track of my sleep, and if my sleep goes to hell, I need to back off, so I already know I can't just bottom up my calories. But what you're telling me is that we don't want to try to push the fat off super fast when we're getting lean. We want to coax it off. We want to take our time. And that's exactly the most important piece of advice here. When you're going from lean to leaner, take a little bit more time than you think you need, and you'll end up being much more successful than if you try to rush it. That's all I got. I'm going to go think about food. My carb load starts tomorrow, so then I'm going to stop thinking and start eating. Yay. See you guys next time.